The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Andy Tuttle here with the Tuttle Group at Fairway. I'm joined by Jimmy Nelson of thecoachjimmy.com. We are doing a follow-up webinar series here, and we had Jeff Curley last week. It was fantastic about how to get marketing for free and becoming the local expert on TV and radio. Jimmy is here to talk about how you tell your story once you are being marketed and getting the exposure, and not only how to do that, but how to do it in your face-to-face conversations, in your digital marketing, and how to really work that into a business model that creates you a marketing machine and creates a relationship with not only your current clients, but those that you want to be your clients. Jimmy is a professional speaker. He is top of his game in his industry. And Jimmy, I really appreciate you being here today.
I love chit-chatting about this, so thanks for having me back, Andy.
You bet. Now, we're going to ask some poll questions here in a minute to gauge kind of where all you are in the audience and who was at the event, et cetera. But remember, the idea of this is simple. We had a lot of you come up to us after the event, the YPN event, and you just wanted some more. Some of you actually are coming off. You hadn't gone to the event at all. We're going to find that out here in a second. But we wanted to do a follow-up series just to say thank you and just to give you some more valuable content and package that up for you so you can put a nice bow. That's what we call it, the business wrap-up series. That's why there's a bow around all the marketing, just so that, you know, it's getting near the end of the year. It's time to start, if you haven't already, working on your business plan, working on 2017, and we're hoping to give you 4 weeks of good tools and a tactical approach to help build out that 2017 plan so you get a rolling start to it and you have your best year yet. Okay, so thank you guys all for being on the call. We're going to try to make this as valuable for you as possible. It's going to go 35 to 40 minutes, so under the time we allotted, so that you guys get the most and get back to your day. All right, Jimmy, you ready to do this?
Do it.
All right, man, good stuff. So Jimmy, here's what I want to do. Let's go over this first. I want you to take away, do a little recap of the YPN event, if you will, and talk about story first. You know, and you talked about the components of a story. Why is it so valuable to tell a story? How does that help the realtor get more business, right? And then we'll go into one of the ways that is probably the best way to help you most consistently deliver that message in a digital environment. Sound good?
Absolutely.
Take it away.
All right, well, you know, thank those of you that took the time to come out to the event. I had a blast talking to you guys, and if you remember when I was on stage, one of the things that I started with was talking about how, you know, my dad was in the real estate industry, and how as a struggling actor, I thought I was going to go into the family business, and really underestimated the effort you have to put in as an agent, and I shared that story about my complete failures of, you know, not passing the test the first 2 times, to finally getting by, to knocking on doors with my dad, to just and in that time of sharing that, or the parts where I was sharing the fact that, you know, growing up, that I used to be 100 pounds overweight, and that I was a 3-time college dropout, and was the reasons I didn't really have a career, because, you know, in my early 20s, I had to move back in with my parents because I just didn't have anything that was working in my life. And many times where I get to give a keynote speech like I did at that event, I'll share that story and talk about the dreams and the aspirations and the things that I wanted to do, and the struggles that I found along the way. And then the fact that I had that turning point moment, that I came in and really had to have a conversation with myself in the mirror one day, that I looked around and saw how I had really settled in my life, you know, that none of the things that I chased after had panned out, that I'd spent a lot of time blaming other people on why I wasn't successful, and had to have a real heart-to-heart with myself about, Jimmy, if you don't change, you're going to be alone the rest of your life, that you're going to be this person that blames other people for your lack of success. And it was in that moment that I was open to start changing my life, right? It didn't happen overnight, but when I share that story, what I'm wanting to do with my audience is share something personal about my own life, because I have found that the more personal someone's story is, not generic, not broad, but the more personal you can make a story, the more universal it is. And if you're taking notes, this is what I mean by that I didn't use broad, generic terms about my upbringing, is that, hey, I came from a broken home. I was 100 pounds overweight. I felt isolated. I felt like a failure because I had tried, you know, college 3 times and it didn't pan out. And when you share personal pieces of your story like that, it becomes more universal, because you as an audience member, or if you're telling the story, your audience member is going to find something about themselves in your story. Even if their story isn't, it's not like only people that were 100 pounds overweight are going to respond to that story, or only people that happen to drop out of college are going to follow it. There's going to be some emotional piece of my story that's going to trigger something within you that's a part of your history or your story, and that you're going to relate with me, even if our stories don't completely mirror. And what I find a lot of times is people in marketing are telling stories, tell a very vague, generic story. Oh, my client's this, or when I was, and they don't get specific with it. And it is in telling a specific story that it becomes more universal, right? That more people can relate with it.
And I would say on that note, Jimmy, to kind of add to that, it's kind of like Simon Sinek talking about starting with your why. You are opening up and being transparent and vulnerable, and that's one of the things that makes stories so powerful. And I think people in business think that you can't do that, right? But you actually can and should, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And know that we may get into this a little bit later. I'm going to jump the gun here, but know that when I say share a personal story, they don't have to be as dramatic as that, right? It's a story. There could be a funny story about your kid grabbing a crayon and, like, coloring up the new bedroom set that you just bought, and something with humor that was a stress in it, and there was a lesson learned out of that as well, which, if I can go ahead, Andy, I really would love to get into the four components of what makes a successful story, whether it's something dramatic or something humorous. Right? That really 4 points of a story, and I get to talk about this a little bit at the event, but I think it's important to rehash is the first part of the story was something where you were, right? Where you were. I was a 3-time college dropout that was 100 pounds overweight. The second part of that is, what were you dissatisfied about that, right? Maybe you're sharing the story about how you ended up in this industry. That, my dad is a great example. He was a nuclear engineer that ended up in real estate. So if he was sharing his story, it could be about the things that he didn't like about that job, that he didn't like not being his own boss, that he didn't like, having to be on somebody else's schedule, that the freedom of being his own boss and being an entrepreneur in the real estate market really appealed to him. So, what he didn't like, and I already kind of tipped into the third, then what you found that was going to allow you to change what you were dissatisfied about, right? And then fourth is either the result or the promise of where that was, whether it's something that you've achieved, there was a lesson on the backside that you've learned, or if it was just a mindset shift and now this is the direction you're going with your life. But it can be a funny story as well. A lot of people wonder, okay, what does a personal story like that have anything to do with my business? And I was just sharing with Andy before we jumped on here is that a former mentor of mine did a really funny job of sharing a story that her and her family like to go snowboarding and skiing a lot. And there was one year she was looking at all the cross-country skiers and thought, that looks like a great workout. I can go do this. And without going into the full story, she shared this story about how she kind of lied to the people when she rented the equipment that she was experienced, that she didn't need a lesson. And she ended up out there by herself, like laying flat in the snow. And it was this really, really funny story, but then she tied it in to explain about business owners trying to make shortcuts and not taking the right steps in the right order to learn a new skill or to learn marketing pieces. And so it was a gorgeous example of a personal story. I've never been cross-country skiing, but I knew exactly how she felt, in the midst of that. And then she tied it in to what she was going to talk about, which was this business piece as a business trainer and why it's so important that you take steps in a certain order as well.
So an example, if you're looking at this and seeing how you apply it to the real estate business, you have so many of these stories, right? It's not just one story, it's many stories, but some good stories that I would focus on is when you bought your first house or sold it, and some of those horror stories that happen. Those are great ways to get yourself right into the mind of you as a customer, which gets you right into your audience's mind, telling about how you were going to maybe do it all your own and you were going to stage it like this and listed it on the market because you thought it would just sell like hotcakes, but you didn't change the wallpaper or whatever it was, and it took a long time on the market and you were dissatisfied and concerned. So you can take stories like that, you can take fun stories about recreation and tie that back into the point that you're trying to make when you have an engaged audience, and bring that into either why you're in real estate now and why you're so passionate about helping your clients, or a specific example that may help them wherever they're at in the home buying or home selling process. Do you agree with that, Jimmy?
I do, and specifically for those of you that maybe you know what your ideal client is. Maybe you work with a specific niche. Maybe you work with millennials. Maybe you work with retirees, or maybe you work. I've talked to agents that they really specialize and they really love working with military and ex-military. Like, I think sometimes people, again, they're going to paint these really broad, generic pictures, and the more specific you can make these stories, either it's about you or a client that you've worked with before, it's going to impact more people. Because think about this. You're really, really going to hit anybody that is inside that niche. But you're not going to alienate people outside of it either, because they're going to see your heart and how much you care, and they're going to know something personal about you. And that really is what's going to set you apart. It's not the brokerage that you're in. It's not the corporate name. That's all generic. I mean, that just makes you, and I think I use this quote at the event, is, one wants to be the needle in the haystack, not the haystack. And so many people are trying to be generic like all the other agents that they see around them, when really, if they would just share a personal story, they wouldn't have any competition left, because they're just going to stand out so much.
So a couple things. One, you can chat, guys. One of the things we forgot to tell you, you can send a chat and we'll answer those questions throughout this call, and definitely get to all of them before the end of the call. So you can click that chat box and I'll read them off to Jimmy if you have any about your personal story and sharing that and how that may add value to your business. Jimmy, before we switch into quickly the medium and maybe the best way to share this story, I want to drop a couple points and ask a couple questions. So one is that this works whether you're in one-on-one, face-to-face meetings with prospects that you want to turn into clients. It works with your friends and family telling story. It's part of our history, or that's how we pass down stories from generation to generation, right? Through the orating, right? Through the art of telling stories. And so it's a very powerful thing, a craft to learn. But I would say in your own business, even how I use mine is I tell a little bit about my personal story, and then I tell a little bit about what happened in the financial crisis and how I saw us having the lowest rates in history and the highest foreclosure rates. And one of the things even Jimmy has helped me with is to pick out a couple of specific families that I personally interacted with that it affected. And then I talk about how I don't want to let that happen again, because it's the truth. That's why I stayed in this business, because people were trying to put too much money down and do all these fancy things, and they weren't asking the right questions. They were asking what's my rate? What's your rate? Instead of, hey, what's the right program for me? What's the right lock strategy for me? I don't have a college savings plan set up. I don't have enough funds in my retirement. You know what I mean? All these other questions. I'm just going to throw a lot of money down, and it wasn't the right decision. So it helps me reframe the conversation, and I'm not battling on rate anymore, right? I'm not in that conversation. It eliminates my competition, because it's about, hey, how are we setting up a will and trust for you? How are we making sure that we get this loan right for you? Does that make sense, Jimmy? So I think, is powerful when you get off your competition, because you tell a story and it helps you reframe the conversation to get your audience to ask the right questions of you, and you have a more powerful discussion with them.
Absolutely. Well, I remember at the event, you did such a great job. You opened that entire event with a story about looking at your ex, right? About your foray as a stuntman at Six Flags.
Oh my God, the worst.
And again, that just, I know something about you. I feel like I trust Andy more than he could get up there and started that entire event in the most generic business way, like 90% of the people do. But there was something I knew a little bit more about him. I knew maybe, I trusted him a little more. There was something cool about him. I felt like we had a closer relationship because he shared this personal story, and there was humor in it. It was great. It made people laugh. But then he tied it straight in to how that story was an example of how people were going to get the most out of that event also.
Love it. Yeah, that's the way. So guys, get a couple of notes, and Jimmy, jump in here, and we're going to make the switch to the tool to use for this right now. But one, I would say, if you don't have a story you're concerned, it doesn't have to be the biggest story in the world. It doesn't have to be you went from 300 pounds, you lost 100 pounds or whatever, but start looking at the stories in your life. You all have them, right? And just create a little library on your phone, right, Jimmy? You taught me that. Evernote or whatever tool you use, of little stories that you have, whether it's from your childhood, whether it's from yesterday, whether it's with a client, and just start cataloging those, because those are great ways to start off conversations. So that's one.
Right, and like right now is the perfect time, because people are going to start going to holiday parties and they'll be chit-chatting over an eggnog or something, and then you're going to get somebody to laugh, or you're going to share some story at a party, and then somewhere in the back of your head they're like, oh, Jimmy told me we're supposed to write this down on my phone. And
right,
you're not going to.
Right.
You tell stories every day.
That's
but
right.
you just haven't turned on the radar in your head to go, oh, I can use that as a marketing thing. Right now, it's just what you talk about at happy hour or whatever. Like, be conscious when you're in the middle, you're hearing somebody else's story, because you can share. I just shared with you somebody else's story about the ski thing. That wasn't even my story, right? So just be aware of it.
And that's personal, and it was still personal. Testimonial
Absolutely.
stories, other people's stories, those are still personal stories. It's still personal. So remember, that's key. Okay, 4 components. I just want to go over these. Where I was, what I was dissatisfied about when you're telling stories, what the solution I found was, and what results I can show, and how I can, and then how I can help, and how that may be able to help my client. Those are the 4 components of the story, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And story is so important. Jimmy, if you were going to summarize that, why is story so important to use in business?
I think, again, it's what's going to set you apart from your competition. Nobody is you, right? Everybody else in here has the same license, or is a male or a female or whatever. Like, when you really start embracing the things that maybe you've put to the side because you're trying to look like this agent here or that person there because they're already successful, 9 times out of 10, those people are successful because they just embraced what's already inherently them. So when we start trying to play copycat, we could and really quick story. Andy and I both had the same theater mentor growing up, right? And he had this great story, and he was talking about if he was going to cast a play where there was a dinosaur, right? And he's like, Jimmy, if you took all summer off and you just studied a dinosaur and you walk like a dinosaur and you talk like a dinosaur and you could totally do a dinosaur really well, and you came in and you nailed that audition, but an actual dinosaur walked in right behind you, the dinosaur's getting the role. What do I mean by that? You can imitate every successful agent in the world, but nobody can be you. Like, you can take best practices, but make them personal to you, because you're never going to, no matter how well you try to imitate that other agent, they're always going to be more genuine because they're just being themselves. So find those things that allow you just to be you.
That's huge, because guys, that's why we didn't go with marketing first and what the medium is first at medium, because if you're not genuine and authentic first with about the story, then all that other stuff is just going to be copying, and you're not going to be as effective as you can be. You've got to start with you first, and it's going to help you. Here's the thing you got to know about your audience, your clients, your prospects. There's 2 things you got to know. Everybody knows demographics, right? What are the type of people that you want? How much do they make? What kind of home price? All that stuff. And you need to know that. But you also need to know the psychographics. That's why people buy. When they know your why, because you're authentically you and telling your story, and they see that passion and you're real with it, then they want to buy from you. And so it helps you find those people, and it helps you that when you find them, that you connect. Does that make sense? That's why story is so powerful. So now, transition. Jimmy, what is the best way to share your story, not only one-on-one, not face-to-face, but in the digital space?
Right. So we all know that people do business with the people that they like and trust. So if I can share with you the #1 median in this amazing digital world that we live in that's going to establish trust and likability with your audience, from like a stranger to I like that dude or I like that chick and I would do business with them, it's video. It's how you're watching me right now. That we could have typed this entire report up and sent it to you in a PDF, and it becomes like that becomes very academic, right? It's just like reading a textbook. But you jump on here and you hear Andy and I chit-chatting back and forth, and you like us, you trust us. Like this median of video is where everything's heading. You know it because you spend more time on video anyway. In fact, right before we jumped on, I was pulling up some stats, and I told Andy that the stat that's literally right here on my screen is that 1/3 of all online activity is spent watching video. 1/3 is spent watching video, yet so many people are not. They're watching it. You've watched those 4 cat videos today in your YouTube feed, or the little kid running into something, or you've been on YouTube today. Yet you're not taking advantage of that because you don't think that you can. You don't think it's going to impact your business, or you've been hesitant because you don't feel like you have a lot of confidence in what to say, which is why we led with the story piece. That if I can come onto a video, whether it's something on YouTube, Facebook Live, specifically live streaming right now, or recording a video on my phone and uploading it to something like my Facebook page, that that I can tell a personal story that like I can sit and go have coffee with Andy and tell him a story and really impact him, or I can put it in one of these spots and have hundreds and thousands of eyeballs hearing that same story and really connecting with me, going from complete stranger, cold prospect, to being able to like and trust me way faster than a mail out series or an email series. That they can see that one video or that live stream that you do, and they can establish that trust so much faster, Andy.
Perfect. Okay, so that's helpful. So then let's go into video and talk about some of the tactics with it. So one, video is powerful. We get that. You mentioned two platforms, Facebook Live and YouTube. Talk about the differences and why you should use both and how do you integrate them together?
Absolutely, great question. So the way people interact or come across both are different. Let's start with YouTube. YouTube is basically one big search engine. It actually is the second largest search engine outside of Google on the internet, and Google owns it. So if I'm going to start making a commitment to one YouTube video a week, right? And that's what I'm advocating, guys. We're not talking about I need to make a video a day. People way too often try to bite off more than they can chew. They can't keep up with that, and then they're not consistent, right? Like anything else in your business, whether it's marketing or anything else, consistency is king with this stuff. So if I know Tuesdays at 10, I'm putting in my calendar that I'm going to shoot a video and upload it to YouTube, my YouTube topics and the way I'm going to title those need to be how people are searching for them. How to, best tips for first-time home buyers. Best 5 questions millennials need to ask before purchasing, their first home, or, and how do you come up with these topics? You're doing interactions every day with clients, and I bet you, you're like, if I have to answer this question one more time, like you all have the same people that ask you the same 5 to 10 questions. Those are your first 5 to 10 videos. And think about this. Let's say you have 5 of those. You have to have 10 of those. That gives you content over the next 5 weeks, over the next 10 weeks. Now, with Facebook Live, the things on Facebook is interruption marketing, right? They're not looking for you. It's in a feed and it catches their attention, right? So again, there you can talk about, it could be something along the lines of the number one mistake I made and how I'm going to save you, X number of dollars by avoiding it. Something along those lines where it's a little more, I don't know if tabloid titles are the right thing to use, right. Andy. A little more shocking. Like it's not something I would search for. But it's something in that Facebook feed that you're like, oh, I would watch this.
Yeah, a horrible lesson I learned at 21 that'll save you money. Whatever, something.
That's great. That's a great example. And so you can take, and in both situations, you can take this personal story and relay it into teaching a lesson at the end, right? We go back into those 4 components. And it could be, like I said, it can be a funny story. It can be a story about a client. Again, making specific. I was, if I had happened to be your client, let me tell you about Jimmy and Kelly. Jimmy and Kelly have been married for 13 years, and they have 2 small kids. And go into that story because the more specific you are, the more universal it is as well.
The more personal. Okay, so let's recap real quick. So one, the YouTube, we all know this. It's people are going in there to search. It's owned by Google. It's huge. When you're titling your videos there, you need to title them like the 5 minutes. You need to title them in the way that your audience is going to be searching for them because that's how it's done. So that's the difference. And
remember, real quick, a lot of the times your audience isn't using the technical terms you do as an agent. Go ahead.
Which is why you want to get the questions, have your pen and paper handy when you're getting these questions from your clients, reflect on that from just yesterday, your prospects from the day, and going forward in the next week, and just start writing down the questions they're asking you because that's going to give you, and then take the top 5 to 10 that come up from your clients and prospects and people that you talk to about real estate. That is a great start to be titling the videos that you do and the videos that you create on YouTube, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then on Facebook Live, the difference is that's interruption marketing, and that's a great way to bring your personal story a little bit into the title, something fun, a lesson I learned at, right? It's more, you could even get a little more kitschy with that to get me to kind of tune in and just jump on there with you for a minute to see what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and Facebook Live is also a great place to do a Q&A, but don't just title it Q&A. Like make it about a specific, answering your questions about, whatever that happens to be. And if you work in a certain area, like answering your questions about the market in Garland or in Plano or wherever the person happens to be, that you can even get that specific with it as well.
Okay, and we'll talk about targeting. And in about 5 minutes, just so you know, we're going to start taking your questions, and we're going to end by giving you a couple of tools you can use to help you with your storytelling. But Jimmy, I want to stick with this now. YouTube versus Facebook Live, knowing that, hey, you got to tell your story first. Know that in face-to-face, etc. But if you want to get it out there and start sharing that story with people that you have no idea may be needing to buy or sell a house, you have no idea maybe wanting to use you, a great way to do that is making sure that you're incorporating your story with that. So first of all, do you believe if you're getting started, should you create more YouTube videos? Should you lead with Facebook Live? What is a good place to focus if you're going to have to focus your efforts?
I'm going to tell you what's the low-hanging fruit is going to be Facebook Live, because there is no title, description, tags. There's a little more that goes involved in starting to create a YouTube channel that you can basically optimize your YouTube channel. And sometimes people get intimidated because they look at YouTube and there are some like really highly produced videos on YouTube, right? Like I've made on my YouTube channel, you'll see things where I've hired a videographer. And so my audience might be expecting something a little more polished on YouTube. Again, you can have a really successful YouTube channel without it. What I know about live is my audience expects it to not have a lot of production value because they know it's coming from my phone, right? That it's this vertical or horizontal. A lot of times it's it's right here like this, or I might have something that holds something that holds that phone. And so I know that. I know I don't have to go through and write a big description or tags or anything like that. And I can be way more consistent about it. And it's interactive. Like even if you only have 2 or 3 people that pop on, you can still go, cool, does that make sense, guys? Or do you have questions? And a lot of times your audience will inform you of what the next part is. The way you can up your viewership on your Facebook Live is have an idea when you're going to go live. If I'm going to go live at 2 p.m., on a Tuesday, around lunchtime, maybe I make a graphic and put it on my Facebook page and say, hey guys, just heads up, set your calendars. In 2 hours, I'm going to be going live and I'm going to be teaching you X or taking your questions about whatever. And then the other thing you can do is once that Facebook Live is done, if you have like an email list or a newsletter, hey, you might have missed the fact that, I was on Facebook Live this afternoon at 2 talking about such and such topic. I wanted to make sure you didn't miss it. And you can put the link and they can still go watch and ask questions and comment underneath that afterwards, which is when you can come back around and still answer their questions in the comment even after you've done the live stream.
So that's really good. A couple of things on that as far as the Facebook Live video. So if we're saying, hey, look, YouTube's great, but you can do Facebook Live, and it sounds like you can gather that, repurpose it not only on Facebook, but if you wanted it to YouTube as well, and you could even repurpose that to YouTube. And there's a lot of stats that are showing that people are more and more actually trusting more raw videos than they are produced videos. It's good to have a mix, but if you got to start, raw video is a great place to do it, and it's on that format and it's ready to go, right? So to that point, and we're going to start taking your questions because I see several coming through here in just 1 minute. On that note, with Facebook Live, are there how long should these videos be, right? What should I be expecting? What should I be preparing for?
I really think specifically for people that are just getting started, the shorter the better. That 2 to 5 minute magic mark. Even on Facebook, you could make a point and get out in 1 minute to 90 seconds. It depends on how effective you are about telling that. But I wouldn't look for long form. Specifically those lives, people pop in, you need to grab their attention pretty quickly. Hey, in this live stream, I'm going to be teaching you blah. But first I'm going to tell you a story about something.
Right.
And so you can kind of book in that, introduce who you are, why they should stick around. You can even say stuff, and this works on YouTube and on Facebook Live. Hey, make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to tell you how to get my free report on, if there's somebody that has already put together a report or a PDF or something where somebody can email you and get some kind of value as well. But I'm talking, let's, like 5 to 6 minutes tops until you've kind of earned and that you've been consistent enough and you have a following enough that you've kind of earned the time that your audience is going to stick with you longer than that.
I love that. Okay. So I think that's good. And, I know you talk about this all the time, but regardless, even if you do go long, whatever, just be genuine. I think you said this on the call we did with the top 250. It's like, hey, if you think it's junk, well, first of all, it's the worst thing ever, you can delete it. But if not, just leave. If you're worried, leave it up there for a couple of days, right? See what happens. It's you being you. And one of the reasons video is so powerful is because it's one to many. You can only have so many one-to-one conversations in a day. You can create a catalog here and really share with your potential clients and prospects and people that you are drawn to and who will be drawn to you. You don't worry about anybody else that are going to your tribe, if you will, who are going to appreciate you being you and get to know you and are so warm that when you do post something about business, even though, and we'll get to this in a minute, because there's some questions about it, you can incorporate business into the call, but I mean like a specific question to you about real estate, or you do a specific business only post or a listing, that they're warm to you. They're going to be more connected and it's going to increase your conversions. That's how this all kind of ties together. Does that make sense? Jimmy, does that make sense? Cool.
Absolutely. And know that and real quick, I just want to touch on that a lot of times you're going to have friends and family that may be willing to share that Facebook Live to their news feed as well. Or there's a call to action at the end. Hey, if you know anybody that may be in the market for a house that this would be valuable to, do me a favor, click like and share to yours or share with a friend. I do that all the time. I just kind of make a really casual, hey, if this was valuable to you, do me a favor, share it to your timeline and post why this was helpful to you.
Perfect. Love it. All right, so let's get to some questions here. All right, so we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can in the next few minutes. So one, what is the right mix between personal and business content? And if you do me a favor, Jimmy, and answer this in two ways. One, in the individual video itself, personal and business, and then how much frequency, if you're doing this, let's say once a week because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew, how much should be personal posts, how much should be business posts?
Well, if we're talking just specifically for videos, because if we're talking about just your, social media in general, that's probably a longer conversation for another time. But if I know I'm making one video a week, my ideal is I want a personal story that somehow relates to business. So it's going to touch on both, right? That I'm going to come in with some kind of personal story. Maybe it's something funny that happened this week in the office that, there was something, because like literally there's a story every day. Would you go to happy hour and you tell a story, you're going to a holiday thing, you're telling stories already. You just haven't thought about how can I use this in context to my business. You can tell that same funny story you told your girlfriends, at brunch on Sunday. But if you get a little creative, you can think of what was the lesson I learned in that. Cool. Is there anybody in my industry that would learn, could I tie that lesson that I learned in this funny situation into something with business? So if we're just talking about the video, I would try to incorporate both. Or even if you just tell a funny story, like let me tell you about this crazy week that happened about, having to drive halfway across the Metroplex, blah, blah, blah. Hey, just, and maybe something went really wrong. But then at the end you go, if nothing else, this just shows how dedicated to my clients I am. If you know anybody that's looking for blah, blah, blah. And then there's just that little call to action at the end to email you or contact you as well.
That's smart. So, and just, I'm going to do this very briefly so we can get to the next question. But if I'm hearing you right, it's like, hey, look, you should be doing some more personal stuff with other posts and memes and, quotes and fun stuff like that. But let's be deliberate about the video and let's make that where we're doing this video once a week and it's about business. We're going to put personal in there, but we're going to make sure we're doing a call to action and relating it to business somehow, because it's only one post a week. You've got all kinds of other ways to get personal with your audience. Do this video and make sure you're tying in business to it every week.
Make it super intentional. Yeah.
Cool. I love that. All right. So next question. Do I need anything else, other equipment besides my phone to do this?
You don't. I always like lighting helps. Like, please don't be the person that I was telling Andy, I was like, I'm glad he had a light on his face, because one thing I see all the time is people stand in front of a window. Yes, that look right there that Andy's doing, that's terrible. Because if video, I already told you that video is going to be the fastest way that people are going to like and trust you, to establish trust with a stranger. If I can look into your eyes, if I can see your face. So you can do that outside and you don't need any lighting, or if not, just invest in a little, a little light in the office or something that, you can get I use a thing called a ring light. that's really easy to turn on. I've seen cases like those. There's a case by Lumee, Lumee, that you can put, and it actually lights up on your phone. It just gives. It almost looks like a vanity makeup mirror. You know, those that like light up. My grandma used to have one of those. Yeah. It lights your face. So outside of that, there are little things that you can buy. Do you need them? No. Sometimes that stuff, because I know, because I've done it, is, man, I'm going to start this video as soon as I get XYZ camera, as soon as I get this accessory. This thing is all you need, and you probably already have one of these. So. No,
that's perfect. No, I love that. That's great. Okay, so one, and Lumee, Lumme, you wrote that down, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then, and I like that you're, again, just what I got from that is don't wait till everything's perfect. If you wait till everything is perfect, you'll never do anything. So just get out there, get it done. You're going to fumble around. You're going to have some troubles, and it's not going to be great, but that's okay. Like Zig Ziglar says, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great, right? And so let's do a couple more. We answered the balance of personal versus business, the right mix there. We answered about the phone. We kind of answered this earlier, but it's just kind of how do I make this, how is this relevant to my clients and my business, making the videos? And I think we touched on that, but maybe if you could touch on it in a broader sense, how can we maybe make sure to make these, how do we make these videos relevant to the clients, my clients and my business?
Number one, you don't know who's watching you, right? You never know. And so my job to get on every time is to share something personal about my life, something specific to make it universal for people to get to know me. The same way I would if I was at a cocktail party, if I got invited to some holiday party, I'm going to walk in the room and I'm going to have some conversation. Now, where it's going to be different with you is you intentionally have already thought about this story and how it ties into your client. Like the example I used with the snowboarding thing about it was a business training and about how you needed to follow certain steps to be more effective in your business. She shared a story about the time she tried to skip some steps, how she ended up with her face, face down in the snow, and how embarrassing that was.
Right.
A funny story that tied into a lesson. So that's where you get to be a little creative is, you can share a personal, just humorous story, but then what was the lesson out of it? What was, it's like the fables that, or the parables that we grew up listening about. And the lesson out of this, we go back to those 4 points. Where I was dissatisfied, what was the struggle in that, what I found, and then what happened of it, what happened out of it, and this is how it also can help you. Like, this is the lesson I learned from this, and this is how it impacts you. And so that's how you turn it right back to your clients or your prospects.
Perfect. Last question, because we're out of time. The last question is just, I am a little camera shy. How would I get started?
I get that. That's a great question. If you were just so petrified first I would say, just start shooting videos and practicing, and if they suck, you can push delete. That's number one. But if you are just so petrified to do anything, the secondary thing about this is what I would do. I would open up a voice memo on my phone, and I would talk. I would just talk the story, the lesson, the tip, the 5 questions, whatever the value piece that you want is. And you can hire services that will take that audio recording, make visual slides with your words over them, and sync those. So you're actually never on the camera. It's literally, here's a white screen, and as you talk, your words start popping up. And you've probably seen it in like a webinar style.
Oh, yeah.
But when you get that video back, that can be uploaded straight to Facebook and or YouTube as well. And there's some great, really inexpensive services that'll do stuff like that for you.
And put some music behind it too. They can do all of that.
My favorite one is Upwork.com, UPWORK.com. And even if you don't know the technical terms, you're like, hey, I have an audio recording. I need somebody to make some slide or make it visual, make it into a video with the words. The people in there are really sharp. They're like, yeah, I know what you mean. And then they bid, and so you can take, the lowest bidder. You can look at their portfolios, and you get to choose between who you want to work with. And it's super. Usually you can get it done in a day, and they'll turn around and send it back to you and email it back to you. But that's another way to get started if you're just petrified of being on camera.
Love that, man. Great answers to questions. We covered story and video. Here's what I want to do here. quick summary of some of the takeaways I got for you, and then we're going to wrap up the call. One, that sharing the story, what makes it so powerful, it's how we connect with each other. It's how your audience connects with you, and sharing that story on video is how to do it in a massive way where you can share one story and multiply that hundreds and thousands of times. So it's a great way to leverage your time, and it's the quickest way to help your audience know, like, and trust you, right? So that's a couple of takeaways there. Also, the more personal your story, even if it's not your personal story, he shared one of his mentor's story, but it was personal, it was specific. The more you do that, the more universal it becomes, because people see themselves in your story, correct? Good. So the other one is some technical points about video that I took away. On YouTube, since it's a search engine and people are going there to search, title your videos in the way that they're going to look for them, and that means you need to be writing down and cataloging the FAQs from your clients over the next couple of weeks, and just pick the top 5 to 10, and you got just 10 weeks of videos there, and you can add those and title those in YouTube accordingly. On Facebook, it's interruption marketing, so you can be a little more kitschy there. Hey, the lesson I learned at 21 that'll help you save a lot of money. Learn from my mistakes. I'm going to be live, and then promoting those as you can, just with a post on Facebook. Hey, guys, I'm going to be live at 2 o'clock today talking about this, and it's the same name you just gave the title. That's a good way to use Facebook to use the video and get audience engagement up, right? Okay. Yep. So I think the last thing here, and it's really about story and tying it together, is that, like going back to Simon Sinek, all this is really about communicating your why. Instead of starting with, like Jimmy talked about in the 4 components of a story, starting with number 3 and 4, here's the solution, here's the result. There's no connection there. Start with you first, right? And understand your why and what you're communicating. And when I, as the audience, see that, and I see you're passionate about that, I connect with you, I'm engaged, and now I'm walking with you. And when you start offering the solution and the results, I'm a warm body and I'm ready to hear it, and I have a lot of trust with you, versus, hey, you're just selling me cold, and then all my defenses are up. So that's the power of starting with story, and that's the power of using video to continue to tell your stories, because you're just knocking down walls and you don't even know it yet. And by the time you get to that face-to-face or one-on-one engagement, it's a warm body. There's a referral. There is a high trust relationship versus a transaction. Did I miss anything there, Jimmy?
You got it, man. Good summary.
Perfect. Great. So here's what we want to tell you. Be deliberate about video. Don't just willy-nilly it, but don't worry either. Be you. Have some stories cataloged and just get out there and do it. Okay? So Jimmy, before I kind of wrap up this call, tell them how to connect with you and me in the next 2 minutes. Are there any final words you have for the audience?
You kind of just touched on it. Like,
stole your thunder. I knew it. Sorry.
You can over perfection this thing, and you're gonna ramble too long the first time. You go back, and if you go to my YouTube channel, if you go to youtube.com/thecoachjimmy and go way back in my catalog, they're not good. They're just not good. But I got better because I continued to do this, and I know you can do this already because you talk to clients every day. You talk to prospects every day. It's the same conversation. You're just looking into that little green dot or that little hole, instead of looking across, the coffee table or the desk or whatever. And just start getting consistent with it. None of this happens. People overplan and overthink this, and they never do it. Don't be one of those people that are going to wait till January or wait till next year to start doing this stuff. Start practicing now.
Love it. All right, so a couple tools for you guys. One, go to upwork.com. It's a good place to look at editing your videos, especially if you're concerned about having this on camera. I'm just used to it by now. Sorry if you're not. But do that. It's a great way to get you started there. Also, you mentioned this earlier to me, Jimmy, but Rick Mulready is a great podcast on targeting. We didn't get to that in this call. We got to it in the mastermind call, but it's a great way to help you with targeting and learning how to get your message out that you're putting on video to the best people that have the best possibility of wanting to buy what you're offering, right?
Absolutely.
Another tool just is Lumme, Lumme. If you want to do this on your phone and you find that you do like the idea.
Yeah, just Google, or I think you go to Amazon and just put in Lumme Case.
Perfect. Lumme Case, it'll light up your face. If you want that, that's a great tool. And then just go listen to that Simon Sinek 10-minute TED Talk if you haven't yet. Great way to kind of confirm what we're talking about here about telling your why. If you want to get in touch with Jimmy, go to thecoachjimmy.com, and he is coming out with, for one, any of his storytelling coaching. He's starting in 2017. email him, get on that list. That's going to fill up fast for 2017 about how he's going to help you tell your story and work that, and you're mentoring you and coaching you. He's doing some great things he's going to release in 2017 for that. But he's also releasing something this week. It's called the 5 Days of Fire. It's 2.0. Go to the site, find out more about it, and we'll blast you out some stuff as well, so you can sign up for that and just charge yourself up. It's 5 days, right, of high motivation, inspirational stuff to get you going, get you ready for 2017.
That's it.
Awesome, Jimmy. Thank you guys so much. Remember me, guys, we're here to help you add value to your business and your clients. So if you have clients, hello, let me just do this again. Hey, if you have clients, we want to take care of them. We're going to have I have a great team that's going to help them have a memorable and enjoyable experience. But I do this for you so we can focus on your business, how to help you double your income and double your time off in the next 2 years by bringing you great speakers and people that can teach you on how to be better marketing, better at storytelling, better at driving profitability in your business, building out your team, help on conversions, all of that good stuff we have for you, not only on this, but a ton of value that we want to add to you. So if you want to connect with me, reach out to me at thetuttlegroup.com, call me on the number, let's get a meeting together and get a coffee and help grow your business and help these clients have the best realtor on the team, and that's going to be you, because you're doing your best to serve them, and we appreciate you for that. We hope this is a good give back for you here around Thanksgiving and the holidays. We hope you have a great day and a week. We're just a phone call away. Thanks for being on the call, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Take care.